You know how sometimes you hear a story about someone giving advice and you just think, wow, that's surprising.
Yeah, like you wouldn't expect that.
Yeah, and especially when it comes from someone you think of as like this wise figure.
Right, someone you really respect.
Exactly. Well, that's kind of the situation we're diving into today.
Ooh, this is a good one.
It's about a piece of advice Sidney Poitier gave to Eddie Murphy, and it's about the movie Malcolm X, but it's not what you'd think.
Okay, I'm intrigued already.
So to really understand this, we need to go back to the early days of the Malcolm X project.
Because this is before Spike Lee directed, right?
Right before Spike Lee, this was when Norman Jewison was attached to direct.
Okay, so really early stages.
Yeah, and at that time, the idea was to actually include the character of Alex Haley, from the autobiography.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and get this, Eddie Murphy was being considered for that part.
Eddie Murphy as Alex Haley, that's interesting.
I know, right? And so this is where Sidney Poitier comes in.
Okay, so he gives Murphy some advice.
Yeah, so Murphy talks about this in the documentary #1 on the call sheet, Black Leading Men in Hollywood.
Oh, I've heard of that one. I need to see it.
It's really good, you should check it out. So anyway, Murphy runs into Poitier and mentions this possibility of him playing Alex Haley.
Okay, and what does Poitier say?
Well, Poitier's reaction is pretty blunt.
Oh, I bet.
He says to Murphy, and I quote, "You are not Denzel and you are not Morgan. You're a breath of fresh air and don't F with that."
Wow, what a statement.
Right, I mean, just think about that for a second. You are not Denzel and you are not Morgan. You are a breath of fresh air and don't F with that.
It's definitely not your typical Hollywood advice.
No, it's not. And Murphy himself said he was confused when he first heard it.
Like, what did he mean?
Exactly. Was it a compliment? Was it an insult?
I can see why he'd be thrown off.
But when you start to think about the context of Hollywood at that time, it makes more sense.
Okay, so what was going on back then?
Well, think about the late 80s and early 90s.
Okay, big hair, big shoulder pads.
Yeah, and also this real shift happening with Black leading men.
Oh, interesting.
You had Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman starting to really take off.
Yeah, they were becoming huge stars.
And they were doing these powerful, dramatic roles, winning awards, getting critical acclaim.
Like serious dramatic actors.
Exactly. And then you had Eddie Murphy.
The comedic genius.
Yeah, he was this total comedic force just exploding onto the scene.
Beverly Hills Cop Trading Places,
Yeah.
Coming to America. He was unstoppable.
Right. He was breaking all the rules, bringing this totally fresh energy to comedy, and he was connecting with massive audiences.
He's a global phenomenon.
Totally. And I think that's what Poitier was getting at.
Okay, so it wasn't about Murphy's acting ability.
Yeah, not at all. It was about recognizing the different paths they were on and the audience expectations that came with them.
So Denzel and Morgan were the go-to guys for serious drama, and Murphy was the king of comedy.
Exactly. And maybe Poitier was worried that playing Alex Haley could pigeonhole Murphy.
Yeah, like steer him away from what he was so good at.
Right. And it's interesting because Denzel Washington did end up getting cast as Malcolm X.
Yeah, he was amazing in that role.
He was. And the movie itself was incredible. But here's the thing.
What's that?
The character of Alex Haley wasn't in the final film.
Oh, so they went in a different direction.
Yeah, they focused more on Malcolm X's own story.
So Poitier's advice is even more fascinating now.
I know, right? Was he sensing that the film's focus would change, or was he just really trying to protect Murphy's comedic brand?
Well, Murphy himself believes it was about his unique comedic appeal.
That makes sense.
He later said he felt like he was in uncharted waters, like there was no map for the kind of success he was having.
Yeah, and someone like Sidney Poitier, who came up in a totally different Hollywood, maybe didn't have the same frame of reference.
Like he was such a pioneer, breaking barriers for black actors, but in a different era.
Right, and there just wasn't a precedent for the kind of global stardom that Murphy achieved through comedy.
It's like even the most experienced mentors can struggle to give advice when someone is truly breaking new ground.
Absolutely, the old rules just don't apply.
And it makes you think about all the advice out there. Is it always relevant?
That's a great point. I mean, is it sometimes based on outdated ideas or limited experiences?
Maybe we need to be more critical about the advice we receive and really consider the source.
Yeah, and the context, and ultimately trust our own gut feeling.
I like that. Trust your gut.
And Murphy himself said he didn't have many elders who could relate to his experience.
I can imagine that must have been lonely at times.
Probably. And it's funny when you contrast Poitier's advice with what other people told him.
Yeah. What else did people say?
Well, he mentions James Brown telling him to clean up his act.
Oh, to stop cursing so much.
Exactly. And then there was this really strange financial advice about burying his money in the woods.
Wait, what? To avoid taxes.
Yeah, apparently that was the logic.
That's wild.
It is, but it just shows you how different everyone's perspective can be.
Like James Brown's advice came from his own life and beliefs, and Poitier's was rooted in his understanding of Hollywood.
Yeah, they both wanted to help, but they came at it from such different angles.
And ultimately, I think Poitier was trying to tell Murphy to embrace what made him special,
Yeah, that breath of fresh air.
to not try to fit into some mold that wasn't really him,
And to keep pushing boundaries and making people laugh.
and connecting with that huge global audience he had.
It's almost like Poitier was saying, hey, you're onto something big here. Don't lose sight of that.
It's counterintuitive, right? He's acknowledging Murphy's talent,
Right.
but seemingly steering him away from this serious role,
Yeah, but maybe he saw that as the best way to protect that talent.
to let it shine in the way it was meant to.
And it makes you wonder, how often are we given advice that doesn't quite fit our own journey?
That's a good question to ask ourselves.
Are we sometimes encouraged to follow paths that aren't really right for us?
Yeah. Or maybe we're pushed to be someone we're not,
That's why it's so important to really think about the advice we get
to figure out what resonates and what doesn't.
and to have the confidence to trust our own instincts.
Because sometimes the best advice is the kind that helps you be more yourself.
If you're interested in hearing more about this and seeing Eddie Murphy tell this story firsthand, definitely check out that documentary, #1 on the call sheet, Black Leading Men in Hollywood.
Yeah, it's a great watch.
It gives you a really fascinating look at the careers of Eddie Murphy, Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, and of course, Sidney Poitier.
You really see how they each navigated their own unique paths to success,
And it makes you think about the different ways to make an impact.
and how sometimes the most unexpected advice can be the most valuable.
So next time someone gives you advice, even if it seems a little strange,
Take a moment to really consider it,
think about their perspective and where they're coming from,
and then trust yourself to figure out what's right for you.
because ultimately it's your journey.
And you get to choose your own path.
Exactly.
And who knows, maybe you'll even end up being a breath of fresh air yourself.
I like that, a breath of fresh air.
That's what we all need sometimes.
Absolutely.